So how does a major political party, one of the two pillars of American politics, change so completely in just a decade? How does it go from an institution with all these competing ideas to one that's, well, almost entirely centered on a single person? Our sources have laid out this step-by-step protocol behind the Republican Party's transformation, and today, we're going to break that all down.
You know that famous line, "I am the state," right, from King Louis XIV? Well, critics have actually borrowed that to describe what's happened to the Republican Party. They say, "Le parti, c'est moi." The party, it is me. And that one phrase really gets to the heart of what our sources found. This shift from a party of principles to what's known as a personalist movement, where the leader and the party become pretty much indistinguishable.
So how in the world did this happen? We're going to follow the roadmap that our sources laid out for us. First, we'll look at the transformation itself. Then, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the takeover protocol. After that, we'll see the new loyalty regime that came with it, and then explore what seems to be the endgame. Finally, we'll wrap up by looking at what this all means for the political system as a whole.
All right, let's start with the big picture. The key finding here is that the Republican Party didn't just tweak its policies, it fundamentally changed its DNA. In less than 10 years, it went from being this big tent for different conservative ideas to a structure where personal loyalty to one leader became really the only principle that mattered.
I mean, think back to the Republican Party before, say, 2015. It was built on these big pillars, right? Fiscal conservatism, free trade, a muscular international presence. But what the sources document is that those pillars have been systematically knocked down. And the new foundation? It's a populist agenda that's all driven by personal allegiance to one individual, not a shared set of ideas.
So, how did this happen so fast and so completely? This wasn't some slow, organic evolution. The sources point to a very methodical, very deliberate process, a targeted takeover of the party's actual machinery. So let's dive into that protocol.
As it's all documented, this takeover protocol really unfolded in three key phases. First up, seizing control of the party's actual structure, its organization. Then, step 2, redirecting all of its money to serve completely new priorities. And finally, step 3, just completely overriding its core beliefs and policies.
So the first big step was capturing the party apparatus, and March 2024 was really the pivotal moment. The Republican National Committee, the RNC, which is the central brain of the party, was basically fused with the Trump campaign. The established leadership was out, and then came this massive wave of firings. Insiders literally called it an absolute bloodbath, clearing out anyone who wasn't seen as 100% loyal.
And here's a look at the new team that took the reins. You've got Michael Whatley, who was well known for promoting theories about the 2020 election. You have Laura Trump, the former president's daughter-in-law, which signaled this kind of dynastic control. And then, and this is so crucial, you have Chris LaCavita, who became both the RNC's chief operating officer and Trump's co-campaign manager. The line between the party and the campaign was just gone.
And with this new leadership came a totally new way of hiring. According to the reports, if you wanted a job at the RNC, you were asked one critical question. Do you believe the 2020 election was stolen? All of a sudden, your experience, your qualifications, they took a back seat to ideological purity. It was all about unquestioning loyalty, right from the ground up.
Okay, so with the party structure now under new management, the focus turned to the money. By early 2024, the RNC had a historically low amount of cash on hand, especially when you compare it to the Democrats. So you have to ask yourself, where was all the money going?
And this chart really tells the story. Donor money was being funneled through these really complex agreements into PACs like Save America. And look at this. In 2023, almost 90% of that PAC spending went to just one thing: Donald Trump's mounting legal bills. It wasn't going to support other Republican candidates across the country.
Then came the final piece of the puzzle, the ideological conversion. For the first time in its entire 166-year history, the Republican Party in 2020 didn't even release a policy platform. Think about that. Instead of debating ideas, they just passed a one-page resolution that pledged unconditional support for their leader's agenda, whatever that agenda happened to be.
So, once the party's structure, its money, and its ideas were all captured, how do you maintain this new order? Well, the sources point to a really systematic regime of reward and punishment, all designed to enforce absolute, total conformity.
Just look at this number, 8 out of 10. After the January 6th attack on the Capitol, 10 Republicans in the House voted for impeachment. By the next election, 8 of them were gone. They were either defeated in primaries by Trump-backed challengers or just decided to retire. The message to everyone else in the party could not have been clearer. Any disloyalty means your political career's over.
And at the center of all this was what's been called the big lie. According to the sources, you had to publicly accept the narrative that the 2020 election was stolen. That became the ultimate litmus test. It was no longer some fringe theory, it was a mandatory, non-negotiable belief if you had any hope of advancing within the party.
So, what happens when you demand that kind of total loyalty? Well, it turns out there's a pretty significant cost. As the sources document, it led to what they call a brain drain, as a lot of experienced, knowledgeable party members decided to just leave rather than conform. And you can see the results right here in this chart. The number of experienced Republican lawmakers retiring just skyrocketed in 2018, and then again in 2024. And many of them, we're talking powerful committee chairs, said they were leaving because serious policymaking had just been totally replaced by these constant loyalty tests and, frankly, political theatrics.
Now you might think that taking over the party is the final goal, right? Well, according to the analysis in our sources, it's not. The complete control of the party is just the necessary first step towards a much, much bigger objective. Using that captured party as a tool to fundamentally remake the entire federal government itself.
And here's the main tool for that transformation. It's a plan called Schedule F. Essentially, it's an executive order that would reclassify tens of thousands of career civil servants, we're talking scientists, policy experts, administrators, and turn them into political appointees. That would strip them of all their job protections, making them fireable at a moment's notice for any reason.
And the ultimate goal here is really quite simple. It's to dismantle what some call the deep state, the nonpartisan experts who actually keep the government running from administration to administration, and replace it with what you could call a loyal state. It's a system where your political allegiance becomes the single most important qualification for a government job. This whole process has a name in political science. It's called executive aggrandizement. It's basically hollowing out democratic institutions from the inside. And the sources show the now loyal party acting as the enabler for all of it, helping weaken independent agencies, discrediting court orders, and supporting the use of government power, like the Justice Department, against political opponents.
Okay, so what does this all mean when you put all the pieces together? The sources conclude that this whole transformation is putting the entire political system under a new and really profound kind of stress.
So let's just quickly recap the four-step protocol our sources documented. The party's structure was seized, turning it into little more than a campaign office. Its money was redirected to serve personal needs above all else. Its ideology was completely replaced by loyalty tests, eliminating independent thought. And finally, discipline was enforced through political purges. These four steps just systematically broke down the old party and built something entirely new in its place.
And so we'll leave you with this final, crucial question that our analysis raises. The American political system was designed to work with two independent competing parties. So when one of those two foundational pillars undergoes such a radical and rapid transformation, what does that mean for the stability of the whole building? The sources suggest that is the critical question facing the country right now.